Tonight on Ground Crew Command Radio, the Cabal's Black Sun or Cube worship shutdown, why DNA activation has been a little slow on the surface of this planet. We're going to get into the real true obstacles of DNA activation, and of course, as promised, a powerful and easy psychic secret revealed, especially when it comes to that internal and even external tech, dark tech that kept us suppressed, including with regard to DNA suppression, and a whole lot more tonight on a huge show of Ground Crew Command Radio. This is the Unknown Light Warrior. We're back. This is Ground Crew Command Radio. You're listening to the Unknown Light Warrior. And boy, developments just keep on not only getting more interesting, but we're seeing more of a payoff for our planetary energy work. And we're going to get into all of that today, especially what may have been certainly one of the major or big kahunas when it comes to transmuting darkness and corralling it back to light, and that is the Black Sun, the very thing that the Cabal has been worshipping all these, I don't know how many millennia. And within that Black Sun, in other words, within Saturn, as confirmed by Laura Eisenhower on last week's show, within that was a black cube. I actually saw the black cube almost immediately, to be honest, when she started talking about it. Some of you energy workers and grid workers may have received the same sort of hit when she started talking about it. And if you missed out on last week's show, you definitely don't want to miss out on last week's show. Of course, you never want to miss out on any of Ground Crew Command Radio episodes, but last week's show with Laura Eisenhower, how we went into real interesting details about the Black Sun / Saturn, is still on the members page, and you go to the 144K members page, okay, which is that original page that you were taken to after you originally joined the 144K by opting in, and just scroll further down those 3 steps, and you'll see last week's radio show. It'll be up for another 24 hours mainly. So take advantage of it. Quite a few revelations. So, okay. I don't know if any of you noticed watching YouTube, those YouTube ads, and there's this new Amazon ad where they're advertising Alexa, except this time the little box, little gizmo that you have wherever, and she talks out of, it's now literally, and I kid you not, a black cube. And I mean, I wasn't worried about it. I was comfortable enough to be able to just laugh at it, only because this Saturday that just went, Saturday morning, well, more like midday, West Coast time, that's when the big kahuna was being dealt with in no uncertain terms, meaning Saturn as the black sun, the planetary entity that went dark, and the black cube around it. The black cube is around its core. It's in its, it sort of surrounds its core, or in its core. That's where the black cube is. And anyway, so all that was dealt with, and I'll get into the details of that later on in the show. But needless to say, that was funny. Open they are with it. So you might come across it. You're bound to come across it if you're a regular YouTube video watcher. There's a good chance you'll watch it. Actually, maybe just Google latest Amazon ad for Alexa. It's in YouTube, and it'll be bound to come up. Yeah, so that was funny. It's about, 4 inches by 4 inches, and it sits wherever you want the AI to be able to hear you and look after you, of course. So, anyway, more of that later in the show. Now, before I get into some critical clarity and awareness that's needed with regards to what the deal is with DNA activation, the internal and external tech, actually, let me take care of that message. Okay. There's one thing I need to clear. And this is one of those dangerous memes that gets either consciously or unconsciously spread, normally by well-meaning people, but it's simply wrong information, and it's actually very damaging information in terms of, because these things develop into memes throughout the light worker or starseed or new age world, and because darkness is usually the one that inserted that original idea into a well-meaning person's head, it turns out to be like a really bad thing, a serious problem. So an example of this is the whole false light thing that started to proliferate, about 3 years ago now. I won't name names, because I generally respect the guys for the most part, and their brothers in arms. But anyway, about 3 or 4 years ago, the whole false light thing started to take hold. And although there is such a thing as false light, yes, it does exist, particularly with the with regard to the incarnation cycle, where you leave a physical body, you go up to whatever non-physical plane, and you're, there's 2 or 3 archons disguised as light beings, and they tell you, well, you have to repay back that karma, and you have to fulfill this vow you made then, and the usual BS. Okay, it's part of the reincarnation cycle. That's a good example, probably the best example of false light. And the good news is false light can easily be dealt with, and I'll explain to that in a minute. But the problem is, with regards to the material that was put out, notifying about people about the false light, which is important to do and good in and of itself. The problem is they were putting too much emphasis, or a lot of emphasis, on the whole false light thing in amongst the general message or what they were teaching and talking about, in an out of balance kind of way. So instead of focusing, 5% of their material or their message in whatever form, whether it's a book or audio, interview, whatever, instead of putting, a bit of focus, 5% focus on the whole false light thing to make people aware of it, that it does exist, they put a minimum 50% of their time and energy and focus on the false light thing. That's what I meant by out of balance. And by putting that much emphasis on it, it got people paranoid. It got people mistrusting of their guides and the archangels to a point where many were starting to break their connections with them and so forth. And it was an attempt by darkness, not physical darkness primarily, to begin to break that connection, that general connection between us, given the physical, and our non-physical high-dimensional brethren, typically the archangels and ascended masters. So that was becoming an issue. And Cobra rightly said there are brothers and sisters in arms, we have to work with them. No, they're not. The archangels are not false light, yada, yada. And it even got to a point where I actually wrote a whole article titled Why I'm Still a Light Worker, because the other article that started this whole thing, which was titled Why I'm Not a Light Worker, it wasn't 100% accurate, and it was inaccurate in a disempowering way, in a very dangerous way, and it's sort of that message. It became a meme. People were, were following, taken on board, utilising, which wasn't, I don't think, was the prudence and discernment that these two particular authors and speakers had intended, but damage was being done. And so that's an example of one meme within the awake and aware world that had to be dealt with. And here's the other meme. It's probably older, actually. It's a whole meme among light workers and new agers who believe that darkness doesn't exist, and how it's only your belief in darkness that your mind constructs it, or whatever. And so here's the deal with that. That belief, because it is a belief, in that a lot of light workers and starseeds believe in. Okay, that's actually a subconscious construct set up to help a person cope with just being in this realm. It's a subconscious coping mechanism. That's what it is. That belief that darkness doesn't exist. Because everyone's subconscious is well aware darkness exists. Okay. And then they come across a false New Age teaching, which, with like the previous example I just gave, darkness started as well and inserted it through people's trauma. Okay. And that is that darkness doesn't exist. All right. And this dovetails, really it's the same thing, not just dovetails, it's connected to the same thing of, that old occult adage of the best thing that the devil did to hide was convince a person that he doesn't exist. All right. It's actually the same archetypal thought construct. Now, the good news is, especially for you 144K veterans, you know that although it's obviously been horrible and really rough when one gets, let's just say, interfered with, You don't have to fear darkness anymore. Primarily because that energetic backing, that necessary, needed spiritual muscle, shall we say, from the highest dimensions, but also from way above the whole multiverse, that's really going to town with darkness, and it has been, which is why we're starting to see all sorts of, other than our action and role, that's why we're starting to see, very clear positive signs that our energy work is paying off. So that's what that meme is. The meme that darkness only exists if you believe in it. It's a meme by darkness. And for people that prescribe to that, it's a very understandable coping mechanism, because a lot of us have been horribly traumatized. And the only way the subconscious can make the incarnation cope is to play by that old maxim, see no evil, hear no evil. If you remember that funny comedy with Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder, where one was blind, the other one was deaf. You can imagine the hijinks and antics with that movie. But that's the thing. It's a coping mechanism, primarily in traumatized people that haven't known, understandably, because we've all been there, including me, haven't known how to cope, how to deal with the attacks, how to deal with darkness at any level. Well, that problem's gone now. And it's really important to understand, especially for people that have been using the ICB and 4 phases. You know exactly what I mean. You understand what I mean even better. And you're able to make those, not just make breakthroughs that you have made in the past, but this time you're able to maintain the breakthroughs, no longer getting shut down gradually over time. And off you go in another direction. All those days are over. Okay. So that's that. It's a coping mechanism, a very understandable one, and this is absolutely no judgment and no criticism whatsoever on people who, don't want to focus on that stuff. It's understandable because they simply haven't been put onto the strong enough resources to deal with anything whenever it happens. So, okay. So I want to get that very disempowering meme out of the way, because it's disempowering. It's not going to help any of us anytime soon. As always, as I've repeated almost every second episode, yes, it is important to not put too much or most of your focus on the dark stuff, quote unquote, whether it's physical or non-physical. That is true. But we're here to transmute it. It's our responsibility to corral it back to the light. So the 2 things that you do, first of which I've already mentioned, use beyond multiversal help to really clean house and to support you, for that to back you. And the other thing is the 80-20 rule. Okay, 80% of the time, focus on focus on positive things, focus on what you want to see happen with your life, timeline, the planet, etc. Focus on communing with your spiritual guides, higher self, etc. Okay, that's what you focus on 80% of the time. 20% of the time, you focus on paying those dastardly bills, going to the bank, going to the shopping centre, and matrix stuff, and doing things that you don't need to be done. And in particular, internal healing. Okay, do that consistently, a minimum once a week. Your internal healing, because that's always going to have stuff that you don't want to look at. And you do that 20% of the time. So it's an extremely, it's a deceptively powerful rule to live by and go by, the other 20 rule. And, it doesn't sound like much, but boy, it's powerful, and it reminds me of the famous quote by Einstein, genius resides in simplicity. So apply the 80-20 rule, apply beyond the multiversal levels of health, and those two things are instrumental. You sort of can't do without those two things, either in the past, now, or in the future. Okay, so on to the next segment, which is DNA activation, why it's been a little slow and a very, how can I put it, like trying to push a boulder up a steep hill kind of thing. The other expression that escapes my mind right now. And why we've had to, and I'm talking about serious, the real deal DNA activation here, organic DNA, none of this black ops stuff, okay? None of this black ops, MK Ultra, Super Soldier stuff. I'm talking about the real organic deal. And why we've had to wait till about 2019 for most of the surface ground crew, you and I, and the population to really sort of jump on it now. And the short answer is there's implants and I guess contraptions or devices, internal, that have to go. And there's external, and I do mean massive external infrastructure that had to be removed first. Like a month or two ago, certainly since the beginning of January. And that massive breakthrough mass meditation, the lunar eclipse meditation on 21st of January, that was also kind of like a prerequisite or a gateway that had to be blown open to allow everything else to follow. And ever since that, it's been breakthroughs after breakthroughs on a bi-weekly basis, pretty much. The latest of which has been dealing with the black sun and the black cube. Anyway, so whenever let me backtrack, because you got to understand the perspective of darkness, both physical and non-physical. One of the biggest things that they're absolutely petrified of and paranoid as all get out is us activating our DNA within the physical plane, within our physical bodies. They're absolutely petrified of it because both David Wilcock and Cobra have stated in no uncertain terms that that's actually their biggest fear, first of all, and that even if just one of us does that, it's all over within a 24-hour period, for the cabal, that is. That's why, with that context and understanding and appreciation, you can understand how vast the internal and external suppression methods, particularly the external infrastructure, has been to make sure that doesn't happen. In short, both internal and external, they act as kind of like little alarm bells, basically. They get activated when they see that your DNA is starting to get activated, and or when you start going up in frequency, when your frequency starts going up as a result of DNA activation. So they're petrified of it, and that's the background we need to make sure we're fully aware of. And that was partly through, vaccines and the EMF television and cell phone tower infrastructure, and then more recently Wi-Fi. That was part of the reason why they rolled that out as well, to suppress the DNA. And after World War II, they started putting in stronger implants through the vaccines because they knew that this time was coming. Now, so the bulk of it was Archon technology and physical cabal technology. And these things would start activating once that alarm bell was rang, triggered by activating DNA to any real significant extent. So the reason why Source / a goddess has authorized the real deal or more significant amped up kind of DNA activation, for that to reach its full potential in only recent weeks and not in past decades or years, was there would be too much of a massive volatile reaction from both physical and non-physical darkness. Like I said, the external infrastructure was so vast and powerful and multi-layered that, it's similar to, meeting your galactic family, beaming you up or landing in your backyard or whatever and taking you up and then trying to live a normal life kind of thing. That would be dangerous. Extremely dangerous. It'll be an extremely volatile reaction from both physical and non-physical darkness. Same sort of thing here with any major, at least, DNA activation. Huge volatile reaction. All sorts of stuff would get activated and triggered, and you get beamed. The hounds would be released, and that's just external. And that's been, it had all this external infrastructure had to be cleared in several stages, especially the first half of this year. Again, you have to understand, and again, the rational, massively conditioned adult mind at false incarnational identity has trouble really grasping this. But you have to understand and really appreciate our degree of power. We're talking literally Superman, and that's no exaggeration, Superman-type powers if we activate even just our 12 strands of DNA, because some of us have more. Some of us have 24, some of us, even fewer of us, have as much as 48. But a lot of light workers have either 12 or 24, actually 24, many of us. But just activating your first 12 strands of DNA, you're talking Superman. You're talking X-Men type powers. And when you really realize that and get that, then you understand why they're so petrified and why they've gone out of their way to build the most powerful super soldiers controlled by, the altar that they activate, that they control, and all that kind of stuff. So as far as they're concerned, they're the ones at the disadvantage, not us. Hence the links that they went through. So, huge infrastructure. It took a while. There's multiple aspects and layers of it, and this is just the external. That's being cleared. And in about 5 minutes, so you can prepare yourself, I'm going to just do a fairly easy guidance on how to remove at least two, if not all. Again, it depends on what your higher self knows is going to happen if you remove too much too soon. So you can do it in stages. But remove the simple visualization that I promised to remove a rather large contraption, actually, around the top of the head and at least several implants that suppress DNA activation. It suppresses a few other things as well, but mainly DNA activation. And I'm going to walk you through that. It's simple, in 5 minutes, so you can prepare yourself. It's a simple, easy visualization, and that won't take long at all. And so there's that. That's going to start shortly. That needs to be removed. As I mentioned, the external infrastructure that shuts down or attacks people who are activating DNA, that's been cleared. Now, the only other biggest obstacle to activating your DNA to any significant amounts here and to really actually reach its potential is the false 3D incarnational identity or adult mind. Hence the De-Hypnosis. Now, it is important to realise, especially if you're new to this show or new to my information, it's been easily missed. And most of us have been oblivious to how petrified the false 3D incarnational identity / adult mind is of anything new or unfamiliar, whether that new or unfamiliar energy or experience or timeline is good or bad. And I know a lot of people with their rational minds have trouble grappling with that distinction, whether it's good or bad. But, make no mistake, and there's proof of this, documented proof, whereby, and many of you have heard this, whereby the lotto winners who win many millions of dollars, all of life's problems seems to have disappeared. And they get anywhere from 2 million to 40 million. You know how astronomical those sums can be with those lotto wins. And 2 years later, they've been found to be in a far worse life situation than what they were in before. This isn't all of them, of course, before winning the lottery. And that's around about 90% of them, at least. So that's proof that once your frequency jumps to a highly unfamiliar frequency level, you rest assured, the things that the adult mind and the false identity has been used to and accustomed to, conditioned for, they get ripped away and, whoop, my God, what's happening? So don't underestimate that. Anyway, the incomprehensible power of the human mind is such that it shuts down potentials for you if you don't reprogram your mind into something that thinks like your higher self thinks. But I can assure you, certainly for 95% of us, and for those 5% of us, 95% of the time, we don't think like our higher selves. There's been such a vast gulf of differences in mentality and ways of thinking, and feeling for that matter, between us and our higher selves. For very good reason. It's been an insane 20 to 30,000 years for all of us. Most of us have been stuck here for, I would say, 10,000 to 30,000 years at least. No, all those lifetimes have been insane. So let me see here. You need to be more like your higher self. for that, the adult mind has to be, more like deprogrammed rather than reprogrammed. And, we have to get the adult mind to think like the higher self mind. And when you remove, and one of the results of that is you remove all fear of the unknown, or energies your current incarnation just can't relate to. If you throw and don't take this the wrong way, because, we're all intrinsically equal, but if you take the janitor of a massive multinational corporation and throw him up or her up to the position of CEO, okay, well, then they're going to freak out when they have all this massive power and responsibility and really nice perks as well, of course, but even so, we're not accustomed to those perks. They're very different energy. Many of us, or most of us, cannot relate to having huge power within the 3D matrix, okay? You could be wielding your flaming sword during the sleep state on one of the non-physical planes and slaying archons and yada, yada. Well, yes, you can do that there because you're more in line with your higher self, but back down here, all of that doesn't mean anything as far as this matrix is concerned. We have to get accustomed and very comfortable and familiar with the energy and experience of having huge amounts of power within the 3D matrix. Of course, we're changing and altering the matrix itself indirectly through our mass meditations and grid work. And all of that has reached a point where we can start gaining and yielding power within the matrix to change it even further. Okay. So let's begin with this simple visualization. And it's quite easy. Let's get rid of those implants and structure, internal ones, that suppress or get triggered, send alarm bells whenever you make any significant headway with DNA activation. So what you do is with your mind's eye, just see your head, okay, shoulders and up. Just see that. You can use the memory of a photo or whatever. And then, and again, don't put any effort into this, even if you think you're not much of a seer of energy or an energy worker. The less effort you put in, the easier it is. And it happens instantaneously. Try to, when you set your intention and there's something you want to see in particular. So just see. Casually, unattached. Have a look at your head holographically. Choose whatever color you want to choose. Violet, blue, gold. And hold that intention. And now I'm going to give you the big psychic secret. And that is, whenever you want to remove an implant or shut down a portal or whatever, and you look into your body, with that see-through kind of holographic way, most of these implants or entities or portals or whatever, they're like the size of a quantum particle many times. Maybe a little bit bigger, maybe even smaller than a quantum particle, which is far smaller than your actual one speck of your DNA strand. Now, for the rational mind, know that the way the psychic mind works is you ask your psychic mind, your higher mind, show me whatever implants, devices, structures, gateway entities, whatever, or portals that I have that stand in the way of activating my DNA with no limit. And your mind, and it often happens instantaneously, that's essential to realise. This is important psychic training. It happens instantaneously. That's how powerful your mind is and your psychic mind, even if this is the first time you're ever doing this. Your mind, or higher mind, or psychic mind, or third eye, sort of the one thing together, it shows kind of like a blown up, magnified version of it in the rough area of where it is. You know, have you ever shopped on Amazon and you point your cursor over the product and it enlarges it, it magnifies it? Kind of like that. So if an implant or a device or structure is, you know, sort of in between frequencies, or is the size or even smaller than a quantum-sized particle, your third eye or higher mind or psychic mind will show it much larger than what it is, just so that you can see it. Okay. So know that. You don't even have to hold that as a conscious intention, because your mind, shows it to you sort of instantaneously or automatically. So that's a big psychic secret. You don't have to worry about size. Like, you don't have to zoom in down to the quantum level kind of thing. You can if that's what works for you, but you don't have to. You can use this method even better. You have the intention of what you want to see. You ask your higher self or your third eye or your psychic mind, show me X, Y, Z. And it shows it to you enlarged so that your conscious mind can receive the image. Anyway, so first we're going to start off with the implants, and then we'll move on to structures and devices. So look at your head. Okay. And for a bit of reference point, just see your eyes, see your nose, see your mouth, see your whole head, see a bright white background, and choose whatever colour works for you in terms of what colour your head is on the inside, the holographic version. You can see your brain. And then let it appear, any and all implants. Chances are for many of you, if you're following this instruction and guidance, it's they've already appeared. You already saw them. If you were getting a vague, that initial vague, not so clear image starting to form, go back to that image. Let it form. Use your so-called imagination, which is a connecting psychic tool. Choose what you want to see. You want to see the whole damn thing, all and every implant. And generally, probably for most of us, they'll simply appear as little black spheres, because they tend to have their own, most of them anyway, tend to have their own toroidal field. They may not necessarily be black, but the psychic mind often shows it to you as black, because that's the reference that we have for, dark, negative. It could be a whatever kind of colour, but black or dark grey will do. So see there, and now imagine, and this is the same old transmutation method that works so well that I've taught before. Wherever you see these black spheres, and you can brighten the holographic image of your head and neck if that helps. Okay. Again, do it casually. The less you try, the easier it is. It often happens instantaneously. Now, some of you may see a little pesky entity here or there. That means that you just instead instead of implants, that means you just need to get rid of them first to be able to see the implants better. Anyway, so your mind will most likely present any and all implants as little black spheres. And if not, ask it to if you'll think that'll be easier for you. And wherever you see that, and you can do it one by one or all of them together, whatever works, quote unquote, imagine them as all of a sudden going bright white. That bright white transmutational light. And remember, we really do have Superman powers, especially when we project our consciousness from the physical to the non-physical. And so seeing them, either all at the same time or one by one, whatever you're ready for, see them turning now into kind of like sparkling bright stars as the transmutation process completes itself. You might see a whole cluster of them around your endocrine system. You might see a few of them even just outside your head. You might see a whole cluster coming out of your pineal gland. Don't worry about getting this right, because it sort of doesn't work that way. Your intent and being unattached and casual about it, that's what allows the psychic flow. The less you try, the easier it is. And watch those things just move out of your head. Those sparkling stars move out of your head. And look back at your head and see that there's nothing there anymore. And those sparkling points of light that were the implants just seem to disappear. And now we're going to do the same process for portals, gatekeeper entities, and internal replacement technologies. Sometimes they exist. And so you do the same process, casually glance at the holographic image of your head. And to be honest, your face doesn't even have to look like your face much. It's intent is what really rules the roost here. So let's start off with the gatekeeper entities. There may be a few of those. Again, they may appear as funny little shapes here and there. Ask your higher mind, show me any and all gatekeeper entities around suppression of DNA activation. Again, your psychic mind or third eye will show them a lot bigger than what they are, but just see them as small black specks for now. You don't have to get into detail. That's not necessary. And watch them turning into bright white lights. And then watch them disappear. See the same background with them not there anymore. And now let's do the same thing with portals. Any portals that are sometimes used to replace the implants. Ask your psychic or your psychic mind, show me all the portals at all frequencies, all non-physical bodies and levels, whether it's plasma, etheric, astral body, whatever. And even physical. So sometimes the physical implants run on non-physical energy, which can be shut down. So just play around with this, okay? Despite the nature of the topic, have fun with this. Have a light-hearted approach, unattached, and see all those portals, which again, from far away, from outside your head looking in, they'll also appear as tiny little black specks. That'll do. See them turn into bright white light. So they may look like tiny little stars. And then watch them disappear. If you want to know that again, another sort of psychic secret, if you will, is the rational conscious mind doesn't need to know exactly where everything is and exactly what it looks like. It doesn't work that way. It can work that way if you, got the time and energy and adventurous, but you don't have to do that. Okay, we need to be quick and efficient with this sort of thing, but effective. And then see those stars, little specks that your light. This is your transmutation light you're using here. Just disappear. 1 minute they're there, the other next minute they're not there. And now, and by the way, if you're struggling at all, zoom out to about 20 yards, where you can see your whole body, your whole self from far away, from 20 or 30 yards away or 20 meters away, and see yourself in one of those Matrix movie white backgrounds, and just look for the entity. Ask your higher self or your psychic mind to show you the entity that's interfering with you. And then imagine that. And then transmute that by, quote unquote, imagining it turning into bright white light, shining brightly and then disappearing. It could all be done in 15 seconds. Okay, now replacement technologies, just to be on the safe side. They're often either within kind of like, they're essentially implants as well, but they quite often have a toroidal field, a negative dark toroidal field around them. Sometimes they're disguised or cloaked. Show your high mind. Hold the intention. And ask it to show you all replacement technologies. And typically a lot less of those appear. Again, from far away, they can simply look like tiny black specks. It doesn't matter as long as it's an image that for your rational mind it represents the replacement technology. Zap it with bright light, have it shining brightly, and then 5 seconds later, let it disappear. And now, there's one thing I want to make sure that everyone gets rid of, and that is look at the top of your head, and now ask your psychic mind, show me any and all devices or contraptions preventing me from fully activating my DNA. None of this tit-for-tat kind of incremental increases. Fully activated. Comparatively shorter period of time. And unless you manage to get yours removed, which is possible, some of you have been using the ICB and 4 phases very, very extensively for some time. You may see, first of all, you see something there, go ahead and hit the pause button and just transmit into bright white light and get rid of it. Just watch it disappear. Now, many of you, if not most of you, if not all of you, will have, it's called, it looks like a ring, kind of like a blackish ring, that's sort of around the top of your, like it's on your head, right where your scalp or skull is, but sort of along the edge of the top of your head, coming to around the top part of your forehead, and then around, when the edge of your head, where you've got the top part of your head where it's relatively flat, and then you've got the sides of your head, the back and the side of your head that are sort of perpendicular. So they're in between that area, where a person wears a crown, basically, where a crown would sit, that the Queen wears. If you haven't already noticed it, allow yourself to see a black ring. You may or may not see more detail rather than just this murky black ring. It doesn't matter. Just as effective. And this is what Toby Alexander calls the crown of thorns. Basically, what it is it's a ring, a contraption with points of it going into your head. And that utilizes a lot of energy to keep your pineal gland, third eye area, and DNA suppressed, among other things, but it mainly does that. Again, in a very nonchalant, relaxed, casual, unattached way, don't put any effort at all. The psychic mind doesn't work that way. And it often delivers what you want to see instantaneously, just the way I saw the black cube in the core of Saturn instantaneously when I put just a slight amount of casual focus on Saturn when Laura Eisenhower started talking about it. So that's, it's instantaneous. Anyway, now, see this ring? It's not exactly a ring. It's not a full oval, it's more of an oval shape, like the oval shape of the top of your head, around that corner where it starts to go downwards. So it's more of an oval-shaped thing. In fact, I saw a round ring. It's fine. But anyway, see this oval-shaped contraption or device, quote-unquote, imagine it or visualize it turning into bright white light. Boom, really fast. We can't even react. And entities reside in there or were residing in there, playing with your life here and there, making sure the poppy doesn't grow too tall above all the rest of the poppies, to use that famous analogy. And then watch it just dissolve into white light, completely dissolve down to and beyond the quantum level, even as an idea. Dissolve. You can, and then disappear. You can lift that up if you want, if that makes you feel a bit more sure of it. But watch it disappear. And allow these tiny little white shining specks, kind of like bright sparkling stars, at around, sort of all around where this contraption was. About, it depends. This could be 8 of them. It could be as many as 12 of these 12 little points where this contraption was going inwards. being healed. It's sealing the auric and non-physical bodies of that part of your head, and getting rid of those parts where this contraption was embedded in. And they're sort of evenly dispersed all around the corner of your head, and just watch them disappear. There's bright, sparkling, transmutational light, looking like twinkling stars from above your head. Just watch it disappear. You can make the holographic image of your head a darker tone colour, like a dark violet or a dark, like an indigo, so you can make out the contrast of the shining bright white light a little easier. And just to watch these disappear. You don't have to see it perfectly, that's the thing. You don't have to see it perfectly, like we need to see things perfectly in the physical to do physical things. It doesn't work that way. And watch them disappear. You can watch them disappear one by one if that's easier for you, or all together, whatever works for you. There's very few rules when it comes to yielding out psychic powers and energy altering powers when it comes to energy work. And that's that. So your head now, completely clear. And congratulations. You've cleared. I mean, we're all a little different because many of us have, some of us have more implants than others, but chances are you've gotten rid of all of them. You can do the same exercise in, say, a month or maybe even a week. There's an 80% chance for 80% of you that you won't need to do this again, ever. And well done. Congratulations. You've become your own psychic healer. So that concludes this big psychic secret revelation that I promised, and removing the internal tech to suppress DNA activation. And I mean, one could always activate DNA to some degree in the past, but these things would kick in and it would either push you back down in terms of activation level, or it would just hit the brakes and prevent you from any further significant DNA activation. So it varies from person to person with this sort of thing, and how much of a threat a particular soul, in other words, person, is to darkness. So well done. I'm going to take a very short musical break, and right after this short musical break, that is a total of 46 seconds, according to this panel, I'm going to get into the rather interesting details about the black sun, in other words, Saturn, the worship, the practice, how it helps the Cabal, and kind of like a planetary equivalent of soul fragment retrieval that was done just this Saturday to shut the whole thing down, because it wasn't just a matter of transmuting the cube inside the core of Saturn. It was a bit more involved, because all sorts of layers of darkness came up. Anyway, all that, and the history, how the Cabal used this throughout history, okay, with regards to the secret societies and Sons of Dragons and the P2 Freemason Lodge, etc. Really cool stuff, including, like I said in the bullet points on the email notification for this show, Commander Ukeron, what he did independently, well, at least at a conscious 3D level, independently of what I was doing shortly after Saturn was dealt with and the Black Cube. Really fascinating stuff, so stay tuned. This is Ground Crew Command Radio. You're listening to The Unknown Light Warrior.
And we're back. This is Ground Crew Command Radio. You're listening to the Unknown Light Warrior. So, yeah, fascinating stuff. It was, well, first of all, it's important to realize one thing, and that is this couldn't be worked on. The black sun / Saturn and the black cube and black sun worship as a whole couldn't really be dealt with until it was everything else that needed to be cleared, preceding that, with the solar system, with the planet, collective wounding, grid work, this and the other. It could have been done till just a few days ago, just this Saturday. So it was time. Everything's ready now. Now, so a bit of history, because this is interesting and important. The Black Sun worship practice and spiritual backing of the highest levels of Cabal is what we're really dealing with here, because this is, it wasn't just the Archons, it wasn't just the Chimera, it wasn't just Lucifer. There's all sorts of, let's just call it layers and levels of darkness that we're calling the shots. And it's like the Black Ops program, where they compartmentalize, and a particular compartment thinks they're at the top of the food chain and realize they're quite often quite low in the food chain in terms of the whole SSP and Black Ops environment and world in general. So this is one of those sorts of things. We're talking about forces far more powerful than Lucifer. And I say that with all due respect to Lucifer. By the way, he converted way back in 2013. He crossed over to the light back in 2013, for those of you who may not know that. Anyway, the Satanists, though, the word Satan derived from Saturnians. Now, the black sun is often, like I said, it is Saturn, and it's the former logos of our solar system. It was a star at some point, or meant to be a star, but that the Saturn entity went dark. Now, Ben Fulford had reported recently that the P2 Freemasons are proposing, and I'm mentioning this because it got quite a few people upset, understandably. But Fulford reported that the P2 Freemasons were trying to push their agenda of that the world should be led by a triumvirate of the sons of the Black Sun, one being the sons of Big Horus and the sons of the Dragon, being the other two sons. Now, the sons of the Black Sun refers to the P2 Freemasons themselves, which is simply a network group for the highest level 13 black nobility bloodlines, who give orders, and the P2 Freemasons, as many of you would know, that they're the ones that control the Pope and appoint whatever Pope they want. And the sons of Big Horus, so that's the sons of the Black Sun, which is the P2 Freemason group. The sons of Big Horus refers to the eye at the top of the pyramid on the US $1 bill, presumably referring to non-P2 Freemasons, such as the Scottish Rite Freemasons and the Grand Orient, who control much of the English and French-speaking world. And then you have the Sons of the Dragon, refers to Asian secret societies who control most of East Asia. Now, the P2 are powerful. They told us in advance that they were going to fire Pope Benedict, for example, and they did so. So this is fairly good supportive evidence that they do control the Pope. And they also bragged to the White Dragon Society that they were the ones responsible for staging the March 11, 2011 Fukushima tsunami nuclear attack. And some of them already conveyed, perhaps through Benjamin Fulford, that in fact the Black Sun is an entity which channels orders to them through the Black Sun portal. Now, there's other stories, and the portal being somewhere in a chamber, somewhere in some mansion, somewhere in Switzerland or Italy. In other words, here on the planet, on the surface. Now, there are others that say, again, as I told Ben Fulford, they get their orders directly from the Black Sun via the gamma rays being broadcast to them from Saturn, in other words. So there's those two stories. Either way, they're both bad, or were bad. Now, this organised, the Black Sun organised, the organised dark ones were claiming, so the P2 Freemason Lodge, for example, were trying to feign or claim that they're pursuing peace, but they just wanted to be on top of the so-called Terran Council, was one name that was thrown around. But now understand this: everyone that I've just mentioned above, the groups that I've just mentioned above, are worshippers of the Black Sun, and they wanted to be part of the Terran Council that will allow humanity to be part of the Galactic Federation of Light. So this is their interpretation of things. Really, they just want to somehow survive and be around and still be in some sort of position of power. You know, they'd be happy enough if they were to survive and just still be around. But now, thanks to this grid work and remote clearing work that's been done recently, the P2 Freemasons can't, and the bloodline, Black Nobility bloodlines for that matter, just can't really pursue this anymore. And that's that. It's over. Now, Commander Ukeron, that's his non-physical simultaneous self name. His physical 3D self goes by another name, which I'll have to keep private. Commander Ukeron has liberated the spot where there was a Black Sun portal opened by Himmler through the Holocaust during World War II that sacrificed 18 million people. That's where it was located, this black portal. And this was one of the main reasons why they did the mass sacrifice known as the Holocaust, which the Jesuits carried out, actually. And this portal has now been cleared or liberated once and for all. And that Gaia can connect with the new energies coming in. And I will get into a bit more detail direct from Commander Ukeron in a minute about his sort of place in the hierarchy, in the galactic hierarchy. So all I can say to that is it's well done to the 144K, you know, because we were instrumental in clearing all preceding layers of interferences and unresolved issues and blocks at a planetary level, clearing all of them to get to this point. You know, to get to the heart of the beast, if you will. Now, let me see here. I just want to make sure I've included something important. Okay. Now, with regard to the work on Saturn itself, there was massive presence. It was taken up to the teams, beyond the multiversal teams that I've spoken about. Let me see if I can remember the order. The cube was spotted and recognized and transmuted. But when that happened, immediately all of Saturn, it sort of began to sink inwards into itself and go really dark. So in other words, this obviously triggered all the hierarchy of darknesses that was involved with this and working through Saturn. And the whole thing got zapped into white light as it began to sink inwards, and the whole thing did kind of turn into a black sun. And boom, transmuted. And then after that happened, I had to look for the event, typically a traumatic event of some kind, that caused Saturn to go dark originally. And sure enough, I did see a giant fragment, a giant piece of what's called Super Earth or Malbec or Tiamat. It goes by a few names. That giant planet that exploded and is now today's asteroid belt. And so that was transmuted. I won't get into details of how that was done. And the Saturn's grids repaired, a lot of repair work on Saturn's grids, the main grids anyway, and that was plenty good. Track back the source of transmit, the source of where that darkness originated from. And then a bit of focus had to be done on the rings, because they were calibrated to receive negative energy and send negative energy. That was worked on. And then there was it looked like a portal in the center of the moon, and that was shut down. And I checked the moon because we all know about the Saturn moon matrix, originally popularized by David Icke many years ago, at least 10 years ago. And that was that. There was these negative waves coming out and away from Saturn, and they were sort of shut down and transmitted as well. You know how when you throw a pebble in a still surface of water in a pond, and then you've got those waves coming out in perfect circles? A little like that. So that was dealt with. And on the same weekend, Commander Ukeron was, quite unquote coincidentally, guided to go to this area of the Holocaust in Germany and shut down this portal. And he didn't know I was working on it, on the same thing. I didn't know he was working on the same thing. Well, at least in this case, the portal on Earth that was directly connected to the Saturn moon matrix. And it's pretty amazing that we both did this work on the same weekend. So just a little bit of background on Commander Ukeron. As I said, he revealed that he had instructions to liberate the black sun vortex. Sometimes portals are sometimes confused with vortexes. We're talking about the same thing here, but to liberate the black sun vortex on Sunday. And okay, yes, it is a portal, just confirmed. To liberate the black sun portal or shut it, just this Sunday, and on Saturday, that's when the bulk of the work on Saturn itself and the cube within Saturn was dealt with. So, this is something that, especially if you're an experienced grid worker or energy worker, you're quite familiar with, where our higher selves organise each other, or we organise ourselves from a sleep state, and one does X, Y, Z, to allow the other one to do A, B, C in another location. Quite often happens that way. It's happened a few times. So yeah, Saturn was dealt with one day. The portal here on Earth was dealt with the following day. Obviously, it would have been unsafe for Commander Ukeron to go straight to the portal and shut it down if Saturn, which is where the portal connects to, wasn't dealt with first, especially the black cube and all the darkness it channels. So, let me see here. With regards to a bit of detail about Commander Ukeron, he's a part of what's called Surfacom operations, Surfacom being an abbreviation of Surface Command. And Surfacom, according to his information, is a joint effort between Jupiter Command, Astra Command, the Cosmic Central Race, Atlantis Command, Pleiadian, Sirian, and Andromedan Fleet, in other words, the Confederation, Galactic Confederation, the Resistance Movement, and Positive Agartha. They're independent, but, they're all working together. They're all quite closely affiliated with each other. It's like a major war, or World War II, where there was something like 10 to 12 nationalities, countries involved just on the Allied side alone. But the Supreme Allied Commander was Eisenhower, Laura's great-grandfather. So similar sort of deal, similar sort of arrangement. So Commander Ukeron's mission required heavy-duty clearing by someone who was quite experienced working with a team, as many of the more intense and dangerous grid work operations often do. And that's when, again, quite often the snake of the head has to be cut off before you can get rid of the whole snake. That's what happened. And Commander Ukeron himself reports, for the past 2 weeks, I've been working on grid work missions to clear some heavy-duty sacrifice zones created during the Holocaust. And for those of you who don't know, if you get a map of Germany and Poland, I think, and join together all those points of where the concentration camps were located, it forms an upside-down pentagram. Some of you may not be aware of that. All designed by the Jesuits on behalf of the black nobility. Anyway, so heavy-duty sacrifice works in those zones, in other words, the concentration camp areas, and it turns out while doing the work, that those sacrifice zones were located at entry portal spots for the Cosmic Central Race. Apparently these things had a connection to the Cosmic Central Sun, according to his information. Now, the intention had been to keep the Cosmic Central Race from arriving on Earth until January 20th, 21st, 2019, when we did that mathematization. They had been successfully, until then, the Cosmic Central Race had been successfully blocked from arriving here to our realm. And in the process of doing this, a further mission was also revealed to him, and he was instructed to liberate the Black Sun portal. So you had the Black Sun portal in one location directly connected to Saturn / the Black Sun or the Black Cube, and the natural portals within those former concentration camp locations that had connections to the Cosmic Central Sun or the Cosmic Central Race, for that matter. Really big stuff And of course, Commander Ukeron is a proud member of the 144K. And, so this was a biggie, but big stuff had been getting removed even on a bi-weekly basis, let alone a monthly basis over the past few months, especially after the January 21st mass meditation success and impact. Of course, for many years, huge things like this have been getting rid of. The work with the external infrastructure, technology infrastructure, that was there to prevent or react in a very volatile way upon any significant and huge inroads when it comes to DNA activation. That took several sessions to clear. And it had to do with that big Archon mainframe center that I reported on last weekend. Last week's show. The bigger stuff have been getting removed, and this black sun thing, it does appear to be the head of the snake. So, again, whenever something massive gets cleared, there's huge, shifts that occur. There's huge ripple effects, energetic ripple effects that occur throughout all that is, not in this universe, not just this planet, and all the different frequency levels of all the different planes of existence. And that often kicks up stuff, which creates the illusion that we're not getting anywhere. Ironically, it's a sure sign that we are getting somewhere and making massive breakthroughs. Otherwise, darkness wouldn't bother responding with whatever it has left. Okay. Let's get into the news. I'm going to keep it short this time because, it's important to keep an eye on 3D events, in that 20% of your overall time and focus that I mentioned with regards to the 80-20 rule. Well, sometimes, as many of you know, that's how we get notified to do certain things. Anyway, planetary liberation news analysis, folks. What to shine the transmutational light of your consciousness on this week. Now, let me see. Let me make sure I've covered that. Yes, that's been covered. Great. Now, many of you have heard the shutdown of all the banks in Japan and Indonesia, and strong signs, cryptically communicated through, Q tweets or Q posts and Trump tweets that Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has switched sides. One wonders, okay, is this some sort of a precursor to the worldwide financial reset? Now, it is possible that the financial reset may occur before all of the cabal and Luciferian networks are all rounded up and sent to their own FEMA camps or Guantanamo Bay. The main thing that needs to happen is that they're all removed from all positions of power. And once that's complete, yes, it is possible to do a financial reset, the financial reset, just prior to the completion of all of them being rounded up and arrested. Because there's a lot of them. I'm not sure for how long the Earth Alliance and the White House are willing to wait until they're all rounded up. But of course, when all the plasma topper bombs are cleared, we can just hook up with our galactic families and go pick them up one by one. Our galactic family will know which person they are. That's literally what we're dealing with. Once the plasma topper bombs are removed, and once you as a light worker are ready to handle the extreme high frequencies of physical reunion with your galactic family. And if you want to be really ready, just keep on doing your internal work, especially the De-Hypnosis. That's a really important one. Anyway, so with regards to the shutdown with the entire banking system in Indonesia and Japan, yes, I do believe that was due to IT financial infrastructure changes needed for the upcoming quantum financial system, okay, which is a blockchain technology-based sort of thing that's being set up. Now, there are more signs that we're closer than ever to shutting down the cabal's US corporation. And it is important to realize when America is liberated, the rest of the world follows quick smart. It'll be a huge acceleration of planetary liberation in the general sense and in the complete sense when America is liberated. Again, it's part of the reason why I'm here. And let's see here. I want to make sure. That's the big deal. We, if we can just do, hold the line, so to speak, as I've written in our last article for last week's show, and just keep on keeping on, it inevitably gives way. The resistance inevitably gives way. There's the old saying, persistence wears out resistance. And of course, you can quicken that process through using the resources that are available to you now. But it's a huge thing. There's all sorts of signs. You may know more of them than what I do. I reported on some of them on last week's show, and pretty much every week, really. But again, it's still important to realize it's a very tense, volatile situation and energy. As the cabal reach that point where they don't know what else to do but to blow things up, to shoot people, activate whatever assets they have. As for those of you who are really doing your homework, you know that they're bringing in as many MS-13 members, hired mercenaries. Many of them are reptilian incarnates, blended in amongst innocent, albeit illegal immigrants, especially in recent months, to plan a literal cabal version of the Tet offensive. For those of you who know some basic information on the Vietnam War, the big Tet offensive was huge and a very bad thing. They're planning on doing the same thing, where they can activate their whatever MK Ultra assets to do mass shootings, activate sleeper MS-13 cells. And MS-13, Corey Good correctly said that MS-13 is to North America what ISIL or Daesh was to Syria and the Middle East and Iraq. The same thing, really. Well, different things, but same purpose. And they're just going to start war. And like I said last week, they're going to do things like shootings of innocent protesters or shooting of SJW type protesters or shooting of conservatives, and then blaming it on each other through their establishment media, and then go berserk. Because there's weapons stashes throughout the United States specifically for MK Ultra and MS-13 assets to use. And that's why they're trying to bring in as many MS-13 members as possible to try to make a real fight of it. and for the cabal members, such as, the familiar politicians that we're familiar with, to make an escape in amongst the chaos somehow. That's what they're hoping for. Because you can't liberate a country if it's in a state of civil war or if it's in a state of chaos. You can't finish off the cabal that way. That's why the White Hats need our support, need us to hold the line to keep on keeping on. Because the signs of the D-class, beginning with declassification on James Comey, that's all going to start. And when that starts, it's going to be really tense and volatile. Because the cabal can only do so much with their media to fool people. So stay tuned, folks. There's more coming your way in terms of help, support, know-how, resources, or the backing that you need, or the support that you need, or the love that you need to see things through for that final day of liberation and reunion with our beloved, our true family, most of whom are off-world. And we're making it happen. We're clearly making it happen. Let's just hold the line. That's the main motto to stick with, to live by right now. And, of course, don't forget that, don't forget the old 80-20 rule. Right, really great stuff. And we're going to edit the psychic exercise to get rid of the internal tech that suppresses DNA activation. That little exercise, we're going to edit it. We're going to isolate it and release it as a free downloadable audio as soon as we can get to it. And I'll talk to all of you all next week for your 144K briefing and to receive that all-important weekly dose of empowering clarity, inspiration, and motivation to get you through the Archon Invented Work Week. So well done, everybody. Let's keep it up. Let's just say we've got a fair bit to look forward to. See you all next week. This is Ground Crew Command Radio. You've been listening to The Unknown Light Warrior.